Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to episode 6 of Transfer Market Metrics. It isn't a million miles till January, people, and this time we're looking forwards, attacking options, because there's quite a few links, there's quite a few to talk through, there's quite a few that we may or may not like, so let's see what tickles your fancy. And why I am absolutely freezing in a frozen over, ice cold Edinburgh. What's it like where you are?
Sometimes you just don't want to know, mate. But it's 24 degrees and it's just past 9 o'clock at night. So yeah.
There you go. The way the other half live, as it were. So what's on the docket for this one, ladies and gents? Quite a bit, actually. We'll even revisit one from the other night very briefly. We'll talk a few targets. Forwards are the sexy stuff, aren't they? People love talking about forwards and where goals and assists will come from. So we will work into that. And first of all, to almost a little bit Marty McFly, Back to the Future, Bart. Kerkez, we talked about this player the other night. We flagged a few things as well, people. We said an aerial dual success of 27% wasn't much to write home about. We said there was a few defensive concerns. We also said there's a little bit of I'm stealing your phrase a bit here, Bart, a young Robbo trait in there as well. There's a physical aspect of the pace, the physicality. There's bits to like, very much a flyer, as we called him, and it seems to be red hot. The talk around and even in bid even seems possible. A couple of days later, Bart, have you warmed to Kerkez, or 35 to 40 million? You're still struggling to.
I think it's. I'm not that far from where I was. I think he's still I can see how he could profile and upscale towards a Robbo, maybe. He is more of a carrier of the ball rather than a passer like Costas is. But there's still concerns there defensively for me. 26% off for aerials, the blocks, the type of tackle he uses is not really in keeping with a top line defender that doesn't, reads the game. And I know that comes with age, and I get that. I think I said on Friday night, whatever it was, that our scouts will have access to data that we simply haven't got. The sort of the camera, the motion stuff. So they might see stuff there that we're not seeing. But from a purely what they're reporting here in the public domain, there's a few red flags for me. But I can see when we put the diagrams on with linking it with Robbo, there was some traits there. But for 35 million, I personally think, and just to reference Maguire's piece as well, anyone a quality writer as always, but for that price, they've got to be near a starter for me. We're not a City, we haven't got endless pots of cash. So if we're spending 35, 40 million on a player, I'd expect them to be pushing to start within the next season. We've just bought the keeper from Spain. I can't remember the club, but he's going to come in, and that's a substantial amount of money. He will be a starter in the future, and he's going to push forward. So if we're going to spend that kind of outlay on Kerkez, I would expect him to push to start. I just think his stats are a little bit away from that at the moment. I'd still be really surprised if we do something in January. I really would, unless someone's come down and put a lot of money on the table for Costas.
Yeah, I think it's fair, and it's a good shout out, because just in case you haven't seen it, people, Sam Maguire's Patron is free. He's on a 7-day trial. He does write about it today and does make a good point there that for a 40 million left back, you need them to be brilliant or expect them to be a starter for the next decade, which it could be possible. The stats we introduced, they're not quite exactly there, let's put it that way. But we will see what develops with Kerkez. And Bart, tonight, we are talking forwards, aren't we? The sexy stuff. People love goals and assists. They are what light up games. There's 3 we're going to look at specifically. And we're going to start with probably the hottest name, I think it's fair to say, with a lot of people. Omar Marmoush, the Egyptian forward, Frankfurt forward as well, who on the surface seems to be banging in goals and assists galore. So I am genuinely interested. What does his wagon wheel and what do the stats say for this one?
So, as usual, we'll always start with some really public domain stuff in F-Brief. But I'll put a few of the definitions on the screen if you don't know what they are already. But I mean, his defensive numbers there, yeah, okay. We're not really gonna, they're not gonna write home about, are we? So, area was 14th. He's in the 60th, around the 60th percentile for blocks, tackles, interception. But that's not what he's inside for. So in terms of what he does with the ball, should we say in the middle third, passes attempted, completed, is in the 60th percentile. Okay, so he's playing further forward, so you want a player to take risks. So there's an element there where that's mitigated against. That's not horrendous. That shows you that he's put in positions to take a player who want to have create instability in the opposition system. And that's also borne out in the take-ons. So successful take-ons is in 94 percentile. So what he's doing is he's having a risk element. He's taking a player on, and then he's getting an outcome potentially. Touches in the opposition box, 87 percentile. So okay, really high. Gets the ball, carries it, which is what he carries in 80th percentile. Progressive carries 95th percentile into the box, has those touches in the penalty box, and then looks to make a pass around there. Remembering progressive passes received are generally in that final third or in over 25 meters towards further goal. So this kind of suggests to me that he's picking those up in those dangerous areas and driving it into the box to create a goal scoring action, should we say. And that bears fruit up here when we look at his assists, 99th percentile for all forwards in this last year. That's an astonishing stat for someone playing not a top side in Germany. Top side, you know what I mean? Like the big two are away, aren't they? And then there's a bracket in the middle. So that's no disrespect to any fans out there at the club, but that's just the way it is. Then you've got non-penalty XG and XGA. He's an 80th percentile, still very, very good. Shot creating actions, 97th percentile, so 4.4 per 90. Now that's a very, very good figure. He's probably the fulcrum of their side. I obviously don't watch a lot of German football, but from looking at his stats, he looks like he's the creative fulcrum from their side and the goals going out. So that is where you are. If you wanted to look at Mo Salah's in the same sort of period, again, Mo's even worse is a relative term. Defensively, Mo's not very good, but Mo's all in the 90s here for most of the attacking metrics, non-penalty XG 85th, and shot creating actions. He's 4.9, whereas Marmoush was 4.4. So again, they do profile similarly, should we say, with different, slightly different volumes of where we are. Again, Mo takes risks in those final thirds. So he's down in the 44th and 30th percentiles for passes attempted and completed, whereas our man that we're looking at here is in the higher end of that, so 20% higher up in the percentile. So yeah, I would suggest this is where we looked before. We were a little bit concerned about the profiling. This, I can see why they've started to profile this potentially as a Mo replacement or one of our forwards replacements. Okay, it doesn't have to be Mo; could be on the other side as well. If we look at the dashboard we created for him, so key bits for here to look at in terms of his passes per minute received. So he's in and around the 2.5 a minute here, which is good. Shots in every single quarter, breaking it into 15-minute quarters, which is good. Again, being the fulcrum of a side, that's what you'd expect. He's involved in, if I just blow that up, he's involved in the very low passing chains, but that signifies that he's in that counter move, which again, if you look at a lot of our play on the slot, Mo is involved in similar kind of moves. So that profiling of the moves he's involved in, what he's being asked to do with the ball when he receives, is similar again. It gives me hope that he's probably on the right lines. If we look at what he's doing in the key half spaces and zone 14, so he's got inches on both sides, which tends to suggest he can play both sides, which is good. His FB profile says both feet as well. So he's got progressive on the left, and he's got just a successful on the right. And this is just one game. So, but he's doing about 4.4 of those a game. So that's a good level. We start looking a bit more in the stats about him, pulling him out from this one example. So he only got about 10% of that team's possession. Okay, but what he did with that, he created nearly 31% of their EPV, which is an astonishing ratio when you think about that. He's only got 10% of the time on the ball, and yet he's produced and actually only 7.4% of the on-ball time for that team, and he turned that into 30% of their EPV. That's a great. It's duels as well, 80% duel rate. So off the ball, not bad. That's certainly better than his FB profile wagon we were saying. Just to bring down to where he is here, so he's above average for shots, obviously, bang on average or above average for EPV, and the rest of them, in and around for the forward compared to what he's doing with his teammates going forward. So, but as our forwards are and the way we ask them to defend as well as attack, I think it's important sometimes to look at that side of the ball, particularly in the slot where we had 4-man press. So we go to a 4-man press and two in the middle. So he will be asked to do some of that. And here he won 100% of his EPV that he was actually asked to do. So for what he was asked to do, which is not a lot, it's 10 of what the rest of the team. He did do the job he was asked to do. And if you look at the PPBDA for where he is, what he was asked to do from defensive actions point of view, again, mirroring a balanced approach from both wings there with the similarities there. It's about 4% there and it's about 6% there. So again, asked to do. He's not just left there and as an attacker. He is putting the workload in off the ball as well. So from my perspective, just looking at, he's one of the few that actually appears on an XG chart on his own, which is good. And his shot actions in this game are all from the right side. Again, if you put that in a Mo Salah game, that's in and around the area Mo Salah's asked that he's taking shots at the moment. If you think about the winner against Brighton, was in and around this area here. He's done very similar things all for his career. So that is kind of receiving in this area, driving in and taking the shots on there. So I think from a purely profile perspective, I can see why this player is there, not just because of the output, but because of the areas he's picking the ball up, what he's doing it in those areas in terms of progressive and successful passes in half space and zone 14, particularly that right-hand side. And then that generation of EPP from a modest, should we say, on the ball percentage time for his team is definitely something that our boys would have been looking at. So not a bad profile, I would suggest, for that player.
Yeah, that is crazy almost to have so little of the ball, but almost to do so much with it for that side. It is insane in that regard. And I suppose for the details, people, for what we know, I mean, he'll be 26 in February, so he is at kind of prime age, you'd say, maybe the top end of what we normally expect FSG to go to. The other side is he does have 2 years left to go track. Now, Frankfurt are naturally trying to get him to sign an extension, aren't they? But he's holding off, and there's various rumours flying around that Liverpool do like him. It is interesting as well, Bart, the way it was phrased. James Pearce wrote about it, and we had Paul Joyce on the pod as well. They mentioned Marmoush and said, yes, they've heard the name. They phrased it very carefully in terms of it could be if a forward departs, because we're not going to have 7 forwards on the books. There's no doubts about that at all. But for a suggested price point of, say, between, as the suggestions are, 50 to 60 million euros, that tends to be around our sweet spot. And with his goals and assists over the last 2 years, you could see why there's real interest in Marmoush from Liverpool, couldn't you?
Yeah, definitely. He's in that kind of period, isn't he, where we typically go in and try and disrupt a negotiation, should we say, and be like, right, don't sign that. But effectively, don't sign that deal. And then we try and work the club down from a position where they are, sweeten it out with some bonuses that come on. So yes, I could see that. His age is probably towards the latter end of where they're aiming for. Anyone who's read Ian Graham's book they'll be looking in the band before that, typically, to then get the best out of it. But I think they would weigh that up. I haven't got his injury data to hand, but I would suggest that probably is a box ticked as well. Those are willing to be looking at an age profile for this player.
Yeah, and he is in that also camp, people. I'm sure you've clocked it. Like Mo Salah, one of those players, the very few that's got 10 goals and 10 assists this season as well. And even last year, he did have 18 goals and numerous assists. So, yeah, it would be absolutely zero surprise if a forward departs. If this was a player of interest, there is a lot to like about Omar Marmoush. We'll see what happens there. These two that are on the docket, Bart, these are interesting names that have come about recently. And I get the feeling as we say these, some people will be, these aren't the most fashionable, but it's as we do on this show to look, could these be stat-based signings? Because the likes of Jota aren't always the most sexy on the eye, but look at what the data analysis guy said, and people look how well when he's fit, Diogo Jota's done. So I am intrigued by these two and how the stats and metrics bear out. So we'll have a look, and probably Mbeumo's the interesting one to start with, because with Mbeumo, he is scoring a few goals for Brentford. He tends to get them early. There've been talk before about him. I am genuinely interested to see how he stacks up stats-wise.
So we did look at him in the summer, and I think we concluded that he profiled okay, and he might be ready for that next step. So this would be interesting to see where we are. Always important with F Brief, where they've got multiple positions, that you click the right tab for those who are following on their own, because his profile looks very, very different when you compare him to wingers, for example. If we're comparing him like for like, we have to click on the forwards tab, which is what Mo is. So forwards, to be fair to him, he is a lot better. I mean, when I say he's exceptional off the ball compared to Mo and Marmoush, sorry. He's in the 70th, 84th, 57th percentile for attacks, blocks, and interceptions. Wow. Now, some of that will be mitigated by the fact that Brentford play a very different style to Liverpool and Frankfurt. Yeah, so they're very, very different teams. Brentford don't carry a player, so you'll often talk about us on UP saying you can carry a piano will carry a piano player if you like. So 9 players is about 2 players. Brentford don't really have that, so he will be asked to do his fair amount. So that might be why in some of the defensive metrics that's showing up. In the sort of the passing, his passes attempted a 90th percentile and his pass completion is 30th. Which is a little bit of an odd comparison. That suggests that he takes a lot of risk with not a lot of reward. Whereas Marmoush was in 60th and Noah was in 40th, so kind of a balanced approach. This is a little bit of the way around. But having said that, his progressive passes, carries, and take-ons are in the 90th or 80th percentile. So that's a deep, and he's receiving a lot of progressive passes as well. So, the area which is a slight concern if we were looking for a like replacement for Mo or one of our forwards is penalty box touches, which is in the 30th percentile. So he's not receiving the ball in the area or getting into the area that we would expect one of our forwards to end up. So typically we either go for our left triangle for attack or our right triangle attack. The other side endpoint is in the box. Yeah, so you can't be out for both. So, and you'll have a wave of attacks that'll come down the left and right will end up. They come down the right, they go to the left. This suggests that he doesn't end up in the box a lot in the end of it. And that also suggests if you look at his shots, he's in 7th percentile for shots. So only 1.83 per game. If we look at Mo's shots, he's at 3.83 a game. So again, I would say they're profiled in, whereas in the summer, there was trace of being similarities. I would suggest he's changed his role a little bit for Brentford this season. And he's doing some different things. It's not all bad. I'm not, shot creating actions. He's in the 85th percentile. He's just doing it in a way that our Liverpool forwards don't generally do, I would suggest. And if we look at his profile, which I've done, so typically he's in and around 2 to 1 passes every minute in a 15-minute block, which is lower than previous. and lower than Mo for sure. In terms of where he's playing on the right side, which is fine, and he's got very limited volume in these key areas, but they are progressive. So he's made 3 progressive passes there in a time zone, which that's probably high. We can check out what that means in terms of his analysis of it. So actually what that turns out to be only 11% of their EPV. So whereas Marmoush was looking at about 7% of on-ball time to 30% EPV, Mbeumo is on 5.3% of on-ball time and only turning that into 11% of EPV. So it's different profiles. He's only got 50% dual rate as well. So for all of those metrics that are showing up in the defensive side of it, he's actually only turning into 50%. He has got 100% dual success rate aerially though. But and defensively, we'll look at how he does defensively. So 100%, that's fine. That's blocking threat. PPDA, so we operate that right. So it's not high. It's a mid block for Brentford, which is how they kind of play. That's about 10%. So slightly more than the left side. So he's been asked to do a bit more work than he was before. Doesn't show up on any of the XG really. And shots in this game, he had 1, which is slightly closer, but shooting around the Murray area, it's only 1, which goes in line with that average that we were talking about before. So I would say he's come away from that profile we saw in the summer. But the summer we saw, I think we said he had signs that he could profile out to be that. Whereas maybe it's a change in role, change of approach for Brentford this season, but he's not. For me, he's not profiling the same as he was in the summer. Therefore, he's not really profiling like Liverpool forward.
See, it's interesting especially when you see those stats. I mean, the defensive numbers look brilliant. He was helping his team. He's working there. He's making blocks and tackles. But that isn't what we're necessarily looking for in our forwards and what the other 6 do realistically. And it's like you say, when you see it, it does come away a bit from what probably attracted us to him in the summer and a bit of the contract stuff as well, people. He does have 2 years left to go. He has spoken publicly as well about he is looking to make the next step. But also, I want to ask you this bit, because when me and Trev did some digging around for the transfer show, there was, as we said, like you mentioned last summer, definite interest. The bit of concern was, almost as you alluded to, is he the same player? And the other bit we got was, he could well be with how G and what the things are saying at the moment. Would you back that up, that it probably isn't quite what you'd think Liverpool would be looking for at the moment?
Yeah, 100%. From looking at that profile and how that's changed, I would suggest that's not in the area we'd be looking to replace. This summer, if we're in the market for a forward, we are replacing, let's be frank here, we're replacing Diaz or Mo. Yeah, right. That's fundamentally what we're going to be doing. So you're replacing an absolute club legend or someone who's probably going to come off if he carries on as now having his best season for the club. I'm not sure Mbeumo is the man to do that. That's even if you thought there were signs that his profile could scale up, which I'm not. I don't think there is. Looking at it now, which is 18 games on from the end when we looked at it end of last season. That's a hell of an ask for me personally.
Yeah, it's a shame actually, because a lot of people will like Mbeumo in the sense of, on the surface, he's fast, he's direct, he's plays on the right, he's got a left foot, he can play as a 2 with Brentford style as well, but the stats don't really bear it out, people. It's interesting as well, Brad there, and was saying that Jota at 44 million euros tends to be somewhere around that sweet spot, as we call it. We're not sure Mbeumo hits that, people. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with that one. The other one, Antoine Semenyo. Semenyo is an interesting one, Bart. He started the season quite well. A lot of people have been drawn by Bournemouth at the same time as well. And I won't give too much away, but a lot of suggestions that the Ants be keeping an eye on him. But we're about to find out, is that worthwhile?
So I was intrigued by this one because sometimes you chuck me a name and I'm like, really? Okay. And I'll go and have a look. You'll know me as well as a lot of people do on UP, but it's just, I'll always have an emotional side and then I try and look at the data, and that's just the way I am. But defensively, very, very good. 99th percentile, 92nd, 99 for blocks, clearances and aerials. Again, you could argue that's the way the team is playing for a slightly different opposition. You've also got to look at the way he's profiled here for F brief, which is an attacking mid-winger, not a forward. So it's a little bit different in terms of what he's being asked to do. So this is where it gets a little bit interesting, and I will do a little toggle in a minute to show that even more. He's being asked to carry the ball from what I'm seeing here. He's not being asked to pass. Yeah, so he's in 50% of passes attempted, so he's not passing the ball a lot. His pass completion, therefore, is in the 15th percentile. I mean, 70% in bad, but it's not for a comparative with those players. It's not there. Progressive passes, he's just not really attempting them. 16% is 2.6 a game. That's nothing. But if you look at the carries, he's at 4 a game. He's at successful take-ons, 2 a game. Attacking touches in the penalty box, 5.5, so nearly 6. So those are in the 60 or 70 percentile. Progressive passes received, so again, he's on the end of a move, 60 percentile. So that's a little bit better. If we look at his non-penalty XG and his shots total, 91 percentile for his shots. So he's shooting a decent volume there. And his XG in the 80s, could do it a bit higher. But what I'll do for those out here is I'll put a comparison on. We'll do, if we could do, Mo Salah's not going to show up in it. See if it does, it goes to Mo's one. So we go here, there we go, here we go. So how does he profile compared to Mo? And that's where there are some similarities. So there's a spike there, the Blues Mo, take-ons. So Mo this season is progressively passing it more, so that's where he outperforms Semenyo. But in terms of his progressive passes, defensive side of it, obviously a lot better than Mo Salah, because Mo doesn't really do that anymore. And this is where Mo excels. But there is a little bit of there's some, I mean, it's a way off. You're talking 30% percentile points, but there's a little bit of a profile there. If we break it down into the pack and look at what we've got for him in terms of as an individual comparing the rest. So passes wise, yeah, he's about Mbeumo level, about one a minute in that period of time. But then Bournemouth don't have the ball a lot. This was against City this game, so not that unexpected. It goes along with he's been asked to carry the ball, so he's involved in the very low passing chains. So that's again that breakaway ton of action that he's been asked to do. But this is what's interesting. This is, as I said, this is the half zone, zone 14 and half space passes attempted, successful, progressive. That's the most out of all 3 that we've profiled today. So he is in and around these areas. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 progressive passes across the game. A lot of them are into zone 14. Okay, now how that could be good for us is typically the way we end up attacking is we have an outlet on the left triangle. It then comes across into zone 14, and then that ball is either fed in behind for our 9 or it's played out to Mo. So the fact that some of his movements he's in are already in that kind of pattern is not a bad suggestion. Yeah, we'd like to see more volume, of course, but it's not that bad. That's a good position to be in for a player we're looking to profile. We look at what he does. So he's on the ball 10% of Bournemouth's time and 9% EPV, which is more than Mbeumo did, but less than Marmoush. So somewhere not quite in the middle, but towards the not quite as extreme as Mbeumo in terms of not doing it. But his dual rate, 84%. So off the ball, good. Yeah, that's a good place to be. We look at EPV. What do we do in terms of stopping? So let's look at him here. So 94% again, not bad. If you compare it into the players that he would be competing with, Mo and Diaz don't stop that much between the 2 of them. So again, that's some good habits to be in. And in terms of defensive actions, he's actually in a dominant area of the pitch for Bournemouth. So, yes, you could say who was he up against that time, maybe, but he still went and did the job for his team in those areas, which is an often overlooked quality when you're playing for those lower sides. So, XG, does he show up? Yeah, he has his own XG chart as well. He scored, so that's good. And his shot actions are in the central areas or to the left. And if you know anything about our shot profile this season, we have been tasked with A, shooting in the box, tick, and shooting within the width of the goal, which is 2 out of 3, tick. So I would suggest that is an interesting player to be linked with. There are some signs that could turn out to be a good profile. The only slight caveat is he's Ghanaian, isn't he? So the African Nation Issue Cup would be something else to consider going forward. In terms of availability. But yeah, in terms of the pure statistical look at it, there are some good signs there, I'd say, in that profile.
Interesting. Someone saying there, thinking need to set, 15 million. I'm guessing that would be euros, possibly, ceiling on any purchase. Semenyo, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, Bart, because there was a few things that struck me, because it is probably one of those names people will be like, meh, it's not the most fashionable. But when we actually analysed him, he does carry the ball a lot and very well. He does get in and around that zone 14 and makes things happen. He did, like you say, get the goal against City. And actually with his shooting, he does it in the right areas, in the right style that Slot's looking for.
Yeah.
Is this one that you guys are looking at this one?
Yeah, I definitely think this could be a slow burn, maybe an opportunistic signing. I think the guy who's posted there about, I think there would be an upper limit on price. Unfortunately, you got to pay a premium, as we unfortunately will do because he's in the league already. But yeah, I'd still be leaning towards the guy at Frankfurt. I really would. I think that's if I had 50 million, I'd spend it on him. But if you could get this guy, he's 24. That's good. If he finishes off the season in a current run or maybe improves, I could see why we would potentially do it at the right price, and that's always going to be the key thing: is at the right price. Bournemouth of how much did Solanke go for in the summer? Was that 30, 40 million?
65. He went for Solanke,
yeah. So I mean, he's a pure goal scorer, but it's a Bournemouth are not going to not try and do a deal, should we say? So I would suggest there's an upper limit on price for him, but I would say probably one to keep an eye on. And I would suggest as well, this would be one that they could leave. So if they don't go and get a top target, this guy, I think they could go in late and get.
Yeah. It is an interesting one, people. So just in case you kind of missed any bits, we had a look. And Mbeumo, unfortunately, may well have moved away from the stats that we wanted and where we were looking in that regard. Semenyo, there's definitely something to look at there. Doesn't mean top target or anything, but a lot of profiles and metrics, you can see why the analysts and the guys will be looking at him. However, Marmoush, out of all the ones we profile, and you'll have no doubt heard that name, more than 10 goals, more than 10 assists in Europe, with his stats as well, as Bart's called out. He doesn't get the ball that much, but he does a hell of a lot with it for an unfashionable side as well. So definitely someone to see what happens. And people will be asking about current forwards, Bart, and someone's just made a good point, as you mentioned there. And Mbeumo and Semenyo, the AFCON Blues, unfortunately, will that factor in? And then again, Marmoush is Egyptian, so that's going to be something to consider there as well. At the same time, it is a difficult one to read. This one, Bart, a couple of things I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned our existing forwards there. We got a bit on the transfer show that, and you mentioned too, Luis Diaz and Diogo Jota. Now, what we got was the similarities. They will both be 28 in the summer. They will both have 2 years left on their deal, which we know in time for sell or renew typically. And Diaz has not had a bump. Jota has had a bump as well. So both 28, both 2 years, both probably looking for a renewal or an extension. Based on the profiles, Jota's had his injuries, Diaz has been linked with other clubs and different bits, as we know. We'll separate Mo Salah from this completely, but Jota and Diaz, would there be a little bit of you thinking with Jota and Diaz, I'd be surprised if both get a renewal from Michael Edwards in Liverpool?
Yes and no. I think the issue's a wrong word. So I think it's well known Diaz was trying to go in the summer, right? But no one put the money on the table, which suggests to me that typically when you do an extension, you protect value. Well, Diaz might have an amazing season, but there's not the value is not in the market already because no one put the money up in the summer. So that would be one from an Edwards point of view. I'll be looking at it going, well, how much do we need to protect the value? You obviously don't want it to walk out for free, but there's no point in putting a value on 100 million when no one's going to pay 50 for it. Jota, we already know that people are sniffing around. He has that ability to score goals, the scrawniest goals. I mean, we've nicknamed Lineker on the pod. You know, he's just slotted with a Jota, whatever you want to call him. He does have the ability to find a way to get a shot off and score. Yes, he's injury prone, but to be honest with you, a lot of teams don't care about that. Look at Isaac at Newcastle, a much coveted forward. Arsenal in with him today with a move, and the guy's probably as injury prone as Jota is for us. So I think there's always that thing about scoring goals. That's why I would suggest there's going to be more people. If we put it out that Jota's on the market, I would suggest there's more bids for Jota. So for me, you protect that value because you want to be able to push him towards making back what you paid for him, if not more, potentially. Whereas Diaz, I'm not saying we let him go for free. I'm not saying that. Please don't misquote me, anybody. But I have a hard time working out what his value is, considering both parties were happy for him to move on in the summer and nobody put the money up for him. So, and unless he finishes this season on an all-time high, yes, he started well, but he still had a cold patch. He started really well, dropped off, and doing it. So, yeah, I think you know what you're going to get with Diaz, and I think it has to be a particular side that he's playing in. And again, we're talking 14 games in. We talk after Christmas, he might have carried on working with him, worked his wonders, and he becomes a phenomenal forward in the whole package. And I'll happily say, yep, fine, I agree with you. He's worth £100 million. But right here, right now, Jota's worth more money. I would suggest that giving him another bump is a little bit of a, but for argument's sake, he's the starting forward for Slot. Like he is when actually everyone's been fit, he's picked Jota down the middle. So I think that says a lot. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is I think they'll do an extension for both. Whether both will get a bump in pay, I don't know. It would surprise me, but I think they would like to protect the value of Jota more than they would of Diaz.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point as well. If any bids come in for either, it would not surprise you at 28 if they were considered, especially reasons there as well. So we'll have to see what happens there. And Paul Smith's made a comment there. Why aren't you talking about Nunez as being surplus to requirements? Well, funnily enough, Paul, that is the final bit we were going to discuss, the Nunez conundrum. Now, but there's so much talk over the years that he's been here. It seems a short time, but so much talk around Darwin Nunez. And I think it's important to say, we talked about this last summer. There were clearly stories, shall we say, put out there by the relevant people that Darwin Nunez would not have been a signing necessarily under this regime and these people. That's not what they would go for. He wasn't in the team at the start of the season. You cannot pretend that. There's a lot of question marks asked. In recent games, though, there's been a lot to like. We have to be fair with that, around a few goals, but his work rate, what he's brought to the team and everything like that. Where do you stand on the conundrum right now?
I think it's If you'd asked me literally 4 games ago, right, I would have said not quite he's done, but I would have been extremely surprised to see him at the club next season, right? Because he wasn't starting, he wasn't shooting, he wasn't playing. It come off the back of, I can't remember the performance. It might have been a European game where he got subbed at just after half time, and it was not a good performance from him. It really wasn't. But then since he got a goal against Bournemouth at home, he didn't play the next, and he's played a few games since. It's been the 9. He's off. I have to give it to him. His off-ball work this season has improved. Right, it was improving last season, but it's a lot. He's putting the time and the effort into his game. Just pulled up his profile here, and he's in 90th percentile for touches in the penalty box. Passes received, he's in the 90th progressive. Wow. He's making progressive passes. He's carrying the ball as well, which he always was, but there's still remaining that. The thing, attempted a pass completion, he's in the 40th or 30th percentile, so lower down. But again, he's playing 9 for us, not a wide player. Shots has improved. He wasn't doing this in the last few. He's got 4.3 per 90, which is 97 percentile.
Yeah.
But there was a period he just wasn't shooting, which is why I was saying this has changed a lot in the last period of time. So, yeah, much as I don't want to sit on a fence for you, I do think this period with Jota not being here is literally his Liverpool career. He needs to carry on this trajectory he started to do, putting together performance after performance after performance. If he does that, then I could see a future for him. But if he goes back to being the one that got subbed just after half time, or not getting a game and Jota coming in over him all the time, then I'm afraid there's only one door that he's going to be going out of in the summer. Unfortunately, there are things that he still does that annoy the hell out of me and many other people. He does all this amazing work off the ball, then he still does a silly foul. Like a player is facing his own goal, going nowhere, guarantee you Nunez will kick him, or give the referee an option to give a foul. And it undoes all of that work. He's blocked the passing lane off, he's got in there, he's boxed him in the corner. Just stand. All you have to do is make the player make an error, and he will do, and then we can carry on that pressure. But he fouls him, they get a free kick, and they smash it 40 yards down, and we have to go again. So there's still elements like that, and Diaz does the same as well. So yeah, there are parts, but his profile is a lot better than it was even at the start of the season. But yeah, is it where? Yeah, I guess I'm making my bet. He's improved a lot in the last few games. Will it be enough to save his Liverpool career? I wouldn't want to bet on, because have you heard when Jota's back or not?
No, we're waiting still, aren't we? We'll get something this week.
Yeah, so that's the bit I'm still a little bit unsure about. But no, I think the problem that we as Liverpool fans have with Jota, I'm just going to show you actually the two of them, compare it over the top if I can get that to work. So this is actually their profiles.
Wow.
So that's over the last year, yeah? So there's not, as much as we laud Jota, who's in the blue here, yeah, there's not a lot of difference between the two of them. Yeah, the big difference is, I mean, Jota's not a big difference, but Jota's better on assists. He's better on passes attempted, progressive passes, but again, not by a lot. The touches in the attacking box is better with Jota for sure. But I suppose the key thing, and to be ultra critical of Nunez, is goals, isn't it? And they're, even at the last game, I think Nunez scored a difficult chance straight away, had another chance against Villa, and skied the big chance. He still has a bit of an unfortunate knack of missing big chances. But as I said, if you'd asked me four games ago, I'd have said no. I think his time's coming to an end. On the back of the last couple of performances, there are some green shoots there, but he's got to carry that on. He can't. He's done this before as well. He's had a run of games before, and it's been like, okay, right, we're moving, making progress.
Yeah.
And then he slipped off again. So for me, I hope he realises that it's not quite last chance to him, because we're going to need him. We've got 20 odd games, 20, 30 games to play. But yeah, it's getting close that he's going to need to carry on what he's doing at the moment. He's going to have to keep shooting at the level he's shooting, if not a little bit more. You know, Mo's at what, 4.4 shots a game. He's at under 3. So, you know, yeah, there's things he needs to carry on doing. And we'll see where we are. But yeah, I think the two of them are so linked. So if a bid comes in for Jota in the summer, that's the link, isn't it? Are they going to keep Jota over Nunez? I'm not sure. Don't know whether that answers your question.
Will be interesting to see. It's so difficult. It really will with these existing forwards. So, ladies and gents, I mean, there we are. We're pretty much at the end. We ran Omar Marmoush from Frankfurt. There is a lot to like, people, but can't have 7 forwards, so we'll see what happens. And Mbeumo, yeah, the stats aren't really where we want them to be, particularly maybe moving away from what we liked last summer. Semenyo, an interesting one, not the sexiest of names by any means, but there's a lot to sort of play with there, and it wouldn't surprise you if he was on the analyst list. The existing forwards, Jota and Diaz, both 28, both 2 years left in the summer, a few question marks. And as we said with Nunez, the last 4 games have been positive. Whether he can replicate that may just dictate what happens with his Liverpool career. So there is a lot of questions around the forwards, but hopefully we have answered a good few of the questions you had around Marmoush, Mbeumo, Semenyo. And even we got a little bit of bonus from Bart's where he gave us the overlay of just how similar Jota and Nunez are. So we'll see what happens with the existing forwards, which brings me to the end. And all it leaves me to say as ever is, Bart, for the time, the insight, for the wagon wheels and for the stats, much appreciated, pal.
No worries.
And ladies and gents, that was the transfer market metrics for Anfield Index.